Representative Lundeen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And it's kind of following on in this same vein. Representative Priola earlier said, all things being equal, the money does come into play. And I realize I would, for the sake of conversation and understanding this, I'd be willing to stipulate to all these other criteria that are important, leadership in the building, so on and so forth. But if we can get to a situation where those are perceived to be in reasonable balance, isn't a financial incentive appropriate for a highly effective educator?
Well, the truth of the matter, all things are not equal. So that's not a reasonable question to ask. They are not. We have very great differences in the workload of teachers. We have certainly the challenges that children and their families come to school with are vastly different. So all things are not equal in a variety of different ways. And I'm not going to engage in a imagine they are, because that's not the reality. There are very real opportunity gaps that face our children and their families. And frankly, I think in Colorado, we've been more focused on the outputs of the educational process and not focused enough on the inputs, the things that make a difference for children and their families that help prepare them to attend and do well in school and succeed.
Representative Lundeen.
So let me just reframe the question in a different way, because I would argue that Representative Wilson could be very persuasive, and his rafting pitch might, in fact, in terms of the alternative questions that are being asked in the mind of an interviewee, do I want to take this posting or not, might, in fact, make all things otherwise be equal. And then it does come down to a question of finance. Is there a financial incentive? But since you won't engage on that question, let me reframe it and ask it this way. Is there a circumstance under which a more highly effective educator should be paid a higher wage?
I do not.
Yeoman.
Thank you. I do not believe so. All teachers do the same job. Now, the circumstance I would see a different compensation working is when those highly effective teachers take on additional teacher leadership roles, or a hybrid role where they are doing some leadership staff development, supporting their fellow educators in the building in addition to teaching. And I do believe that when the role changes, that compensation should change. But I do not believe that we should be basing salary decisions based solely on an evaluation system that's yet to prove itself and that has been implemented with such disparity across the state.
Representative Lundeen.
Final question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So then your calculus as to this equation is based entirely on inputs. In order for a more effective educator to get a higher wage, they would have to take on additional responsibilities, leadership responsibilities or something of that nature, in order to be worthy of a higher wage. It's an inputs calculation that you're giving me. Is that correct?
Ms. Delman.
I guess I'm not quite understanding your question, Representative.
Well, and I'll clarify the previous question, because I promised I would only ask that question. My previous question, which you answered, saying that no, there wasn't a circumstance you'd have to take on additional leadership in terms of having a higher wage, was predicated upon, is there a circumstance under which a more highly effective educator is in fact worthy of a higher wage? And you had said no. So I was just clarifying, coming back to that, saying your calculus is based entirely upon the inputs, not the result, the production, the service result gained, but based on the input into the equation.
Well, I think that taking on leadership roles is an output, so that is a focus on an output. Again, the current evaluation system is not being implemented in the same way across the state. Administrators and principals don't have the same quality of training provided to them by their districts. Their observations are not being normed against each other within a district and across the state. So I think at this particular point in time, it is wrong to base salary and compensation decisions based on an effectiveness rating of a still flawed evaluation system.
So I'll close off. Won't be a question, just a comment. Thank you for engaging on this series of questions, Ms. Dahlman, and we'll probably agree to disagree in some significant, meaningful ways on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.